Reality can only reflect your inner vision. This is not a comforting affirmation of positive thinking. It is a brutal scientific statement about how human perception works. A Chilean neurobiologist named Humberto Maturana spent decades studying frogs. Yes, frogs. He wanted to understand how these amphibians see the world. He discovered something that turned neuroscience upside down. The frog's eye does not see flies. It only sees small, dark, moving objects. The frog's brain builds the fly out of those fragments. You do not see flies, you see patterns that your brain interprets as flies. Now take a deep breath and accept this truth. You do not see difficult people, impossible situations, or insurmountable obstacles. You see fragments of reality that your nervous system organizes according to your internal patterns of interpretation. Epictetus, the slave philosopher who became one of the greatest masters of Stoicism, said something that modern neuroscience confirmed 2,000 years later. It is not things themselves that disturb us, but the opinions we have about things. But he was not talking about cheap optimism. He was pointing to a radical discovery. Your reality is literally constructed by the perceptual apparatus you carry in your head. Imagine a camera that can only photograph what it is already programmed to recognize. If it has been programmed to detect threats, it will find danger at every corner. If it has been calibrated to perceive beauty, it will reveal poetry in peeling walls. You are that camera. Your mind is that lens. And today we are going to take this equipment apart to understand how it works. Because when you understand that reality is a mirror reflecting your internal filters, two possibilities open up. You can continue being a victim of your unconscious patterns, or you can become the conscious programmer of your own perception. The question that will accompany us for the next few minutes is not, why is life like this, but why do I see life this way? There is a secret laboratory running 24 hours a day inside your head. In this laboratory, an invisible chemist is constantly mixing the ingredients of your reality. This chemist is called the reticular activating system. It is a small structure in your brainstem that works as an extremely sophisticated filter. Every second you receive 11 million bits of information through your senses. Consciously, you can only process about 40 bits. The reticular activating system decides which 40 bits you will notice. It is as if you were at a party where 100 people are talking at the same time, but you only hear that one conversation about the subject that interests you the most at that moment. The rest becomes background noise. Ibn Sina, the great Persian physician of the 11th century, already intuited this truth when he wrote, "Perception is the mother of reality." He was treating patients who lived completely different realities despite sharing the same physical environments. A man who has just bought a red car begins to notice red cars everywhere. A pregnant woman sees bellies and babies where before she only saw indifferent crowds. Someone in love finds signs of love even in traffic signs. They are not imagining things. Their perceptual filters have been reconfigured and now capture frequencies that were previously invisible. The chemist in your mental laboratory works with three main ingredients: your deepest beliefs, your dominant emotions, and your unconscious expectations. He mixes these elements and produces what you call objective reality. But here is the devastating insight. If you have a deep belief that people are selfish, your reticular activating system will highlight every act of selfishness it finds and make every act of generosity invisible. You will accumulate constant evidence that your belief was correct. If you carry a dominant emotion of distrust, you will notice micro-expressions of falseness in sincere faces and interpret kindness as manipulation. If you have unconscious expectations of failure, you will perceive problems where others see solutions and obstacles, where others find opportunities. The most frightening thing is that this happens automatically. You do not consciously decide to filter reality this way. The chemist works behind the scenes, creating your life experience according to recipes you don't even know you have. Nisargadatta Maharaj, the sage from Mumbai who sold cigarettes at a street stall, used to ask his visitors, "Who decided that you are unhappy?" Most answered by speaking of external circumstances. He insisted, "No, who inside you decided to interpret those circumstances as unhappiness?" Your perceptual filters have a history. They were not born with you, nor installed by chance. They are archaeological sediments of experiences, traumas, successes, fears, and lessons accumulated over the years. A child who grows up in a family where displays of affection are rare develops filters that detect rejection with microscopic precision but struggle to recognize genuine love. Another who grew up being constantly criticized programs their reticular activating system to pick up any sign of disapproval, even when it does not exist. Carl Jung realized that we carry within us autonomous complexes, small psychic systems with a life of their own that filter our perception without our conscious permission. They work like invisible glasses that color everything we see. The abandoned complex sees signs of imminent abandonment in every relationship. The inadequate complex detects evidence of incompetence in every challenge. The victim complex turns every difficulty into confirmation that the world is unjust. But here is a truth that can set you free. These filters are not fixed. They crystallize through repetition and can be dissolved through awareness. Meister Eckhart, the German mystic of the 13th century, described a process he called detachment. It was not about renouncing the world, but renouncing the lenses through which we interpret the world. "The eye through which I see God is the same eye through which God sees me," he wrote, pointing to a perception that transcends personal filters. Imagine that you discovered you have been wearing dark glasses for so long that you forgot you were wearing them. Your reality has always seemed darker than it really is. The moment you remove the glasses, nothing changes in the external world, but your experience of the world is completely transformed. The Siberian shamans have a practice called mirror breaking. They recognize that each person lives within a mirrored reality, a world that reflects back their own internal projections. To heal someone, they must first break these mirrors, allowing the person to see beyond their own reflections. The essential archaeological question is, what experiences created the filters through which you see the world? What old pain is still coloring your present perception? What adolescent fear is still programming your reticular activating system to detect dangers that may no longer exist? Dogen, the Japanese Zen master, taught that to study the path is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. He was pointing to a process of awareness that allows us to recognize our perceptual filters and gradually free ourselves from them. It is not about judging these filters as right or wrong. They served a purpose at a specific time in your life. But perhaps now it is time to update the software of your perception. There is an experiment you can do right now to prove how your inner vision determines your outer experience. It is disturbingly simple and absolutely revealing. Think of someone you consider difficult to deal with. Visualize that person clearly in your mind. Now observe what qualities you attribute to them: stubborn, selfish, manipulative, arrogant. There, you have just created a specific perceptual filter. The next time you interact with that person, your reticular activating system will highlight every behavior that confirms those qualities and minimize any evidence to the contrary. Now do the reverse experiment. Think of someone you love deeply. What qualities do you see in that person? Kindness, intelligence, humor, affection. You have created another filter. In that person's presence, you notice every gesture of affection and even interpret their imperfections as charm. But here is the most radical twist. These two people may be exactly the same in their objective characteristics. The difference lies in the filters you activate in the presence of each one. Hafez, the Persian poet, wrote, "I wish to see your original face before your parents taught you what is beautiful and what is ugly." He was referring to this ability to see beyond the projections we carry. The reality is that you never see people. You see your interpretations of people. You never experience situations, you experience your mental translation of situations. A Tibetan Buddhist, a scientific materialist, and a fundamentalist Christian may look at exactly the same mountain and have three completely different experiences. For one, it is a manifestation of cosmic impermanence. For another, it is a geological formation resulting from physical processes. For the third, it is a divine creation that glorifies God. Who is right? All and none. The mountain simply is. The three realities are perceptual constructions equally valid and equally limited. Simone Weil, the French philosopher, who was one of the most penetrating thinkers of the 20th century, called this pure attention. the ability to look at something without projecting onto it our usual mental categories. She noticed that most human suffering comes not from circumstances themselves, but from the violence we do to reality by forcing it to fit into our pre-established concepts. Here is a practical exercise. Today, choose a situation you consider problematic. It may be a difficult relationship, a professional challenge, a financial limitation. Now ask yourself, if I completely removed my judgments, interpretations, and expectations about this situation, what would remain? What pure facts exist, separate from the stories I tell about them? Often you will discover that the problematic situation is 20% facts and 80% interpretation. And interpretation can be changed instantly. When you viscerally understand that your experience of reality is a product of your internal filters, a radical freedom becomes possible. The freedom to consciously change your filters. Now that you know you are the unconscious programmer of your own reality, the natural question is, how to consciously reprogram it? The answer is not in visualization techniques or positive affirmations. It lies in something much more subtle and powerful, in the quality of your attention. Viktor Frankl, the Austrian psychiatrist who survived the Nazi concentration camps, discovered that even in the most extreme circumstances, human beings still had one fundamental freedom: the freedom to choose their attitude toward circumstances. He realized that two prisoners in the same horrible conditions could have radically different experiences, depending on the meaning they attributed to suffering. But Frankl went further. He demonstrated that by consciously changing our inner attitude, we change our perception of external facts. And by changing our perception, we change our response. And by changing our response, we change our results. The technology of perceptual reprogramming works through 3 stages. First, interception. You learn to catch your filters the moment they are operating. It is like catching a thief in action. The moment you think this person is impossible, you need to notice, aha, my impossibility filter is active. Second, investigation. You question the filter. Is it true that this person is impossible? Or is it true that I have a filter that detects impossibility too easily? Often you will discover that the filter is a generalization based on limited evidence. Third, reinstallation. You consciously choose a different filter. Instead of this person is impossible, you can try this person is expressing a pattern I do not yet understand, or this person is suffering in a way I cannot yet see. Chuang Tzu, the Taoist philosopher, told a story about a man who lost his horse. The neighbors said, "What bad luck?" He replied, "Maybe." The horse returned, bringing wild horses. The neighbors said, "What good luck?" He replied, "Maybe." His son broke his leg trying to tame one of the wild horses. "What bad luck?" "Maybe." War broke out, and all the young men were drafted except his son, who was injured. "What good luck?" "Maybe." Chuang Tzu's wisdom was not in indecision, but in the understanding that our initial interpretation of events is always partial and provisional. He had developed a filter of non-judgment that allowed him to respond to situations with greater flexibility. Pema Chodron, the American Buddhist nun, teaches a practice she calls beginner's mind. It is the ability to look at familiar situations as if seeing them for the first time, without the filters of past experience. Imagine meeting your partner today as if it were the first time, without the history of small resentments, frustrated expectations, and established patterns. What person would you see? Perceptual reprogramming is not self-deception, it is precision. It is seeing with greater clarity by removing the distortions that our unconscious filters create. There is a quality of consciousness that Zen masters call mirror mind. It is an attention so pure that it reflects everything without retaining anything, like the surface of a perfectly calm lake. When a heron lands on the water, the lake reflects the heron perfectly. When the heron flies away, no trace remains on the surface. The lake is not traumatized by the heron, nor does it develop a heron complex. It simply reflects what is present in the present moment. Your natural consciousness has this same quality. But over the years, you have accumulated memories on the surface, residues of past experiences that distort everything reflected there. It is as if your inner lake were full of old ripples that never calmed down. Each new experience is not reflected clearly, but mixes with the disturbances of past events. Shunryu Suzuki, the Zen master who brought Buddhism to the West, said, "In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few." He was pointing to this quality of perceptual freshness that allows one to see each moment without the lenses of accumulated experience. A small child can be fascinated by a butterfly for 20 minutes. For them, that butterfly is absolutely unique, new, miraculous. An adult sees the same butterfly and thinks, "Oh, a butterfly," and moves on, completely missing the present miracle. The difference is not in the butterfly, it is in the quality of attention. Ramana Maharshi, the silent sage of Arunachala, rarely spoke, but when he did, his words had the power to awaken because they came from this quality of mirror-like consciousness. He saw each person who came to him as if it were the first time, without the categories of spiritual seeker, problematic person, or advanced disciple. This perception without memory does not mean amnesia or naivety. It means not allowing past interpretations to contaminate present perception. You can experience this right now. Look at your hands as if you had never seen hands before. Observe the lines, the textures, the way the light falls on the skin. For a few seconds, your hands stop being your hands and become simply an extraordinary form manifesting in space. In this moment of fresh perception, you are experiencing reality without filters. It is disturbingly vivid, almost psychedelic, because you are seeing without the mental categories that usually dull your perception. The memoryless mirror is your natural capacity for consciousness that has been obscured, not lost. Each moment offers the possibility of cleansing, of perceiving without the accumulated distortions. When you look at someone you have known for years, with mirror-like eyes without memory, you may discover a fascinating stranger where before there was only tedious familiarity. When you face a familiar challenge with beginner's mind, you may find solutions that were invisible through the filters of past experience. The external reality does not change, but your experience of reality becomes infinitely more vivid, surprising, and fluid. You have come this far carrying a question: how can reality reflect only my inner vision? Now you know the question was inverted. The real question is, how could it be otherwise? You discovered that you possess a sophisticated neurological laboratory that filters 11 million bits of information per second, letting through only 40 bits that match your internal patterns. You understood that these patterns were sculpted by past experiences that continue programming your present perception. More importantly, you realized that you are not a victim of these filters. You are the unconscious programmer who can become conscious. Ramakrishna, the 19th century Bengali mystic, used to say, "The wind of the ego blows, but when it stops, we see that the boat has not moved an inch." He was pointing to the fact that all our mental agitation happens on the surface. Deep down, there is a stillness that has never been disturbed. That stillness is your mirror consciousness, the ability to perceive without distorting, to reflect without retaining, to respond without reacting. When you operate from that consciousness, something extraordinary happens. You stop trying to change external reality and discover that it transforms naturally in response to the change in the quality of your perception. Not because you are projecting artificial positivity, but because you are seeing with greater precision. You are perceiving possibilities that your old filters made invisible. One last story. A young monk asked the master, "How can I achieve enlightenment?" The master replied, "In the same way you reach the top of a 100-foot tree." "How?" "By climbing." "But master, it's impossible to climb a 100-foot tree." "Exactly," said the master. "First you must plant the tree. The tree you must plant is the daily practice of noticing your perceptual filters in action, of catching the moment when your automatic interpretation is creating your experience, of consciously choosing a different lens through which to see. This is not the work of a day or a week. It is the cultivation of a new way of being present that may take years to mature. But it can start now, in this moment, with the next person you meet, the next challenge you face, the next emotion that arises. Ask yourself, what filters are active right now? What lens am I using to interpret this experience? What other ways of seeing are available? Reality is an infinitely generous mirror. It will reflect any quality of consciousness you bring to the encounter. If you bring fear, it will mirror situations that confirm your fears. If you bring curiosity, it will reveal mysteries. If you bring compassion, it will show opportunities for healing. The mirror does not judge what it reflects. It simply offers back whatever you project onto it. Now you know you are not only the observer of your reality, you are its secret programmer. Use this power consciously.